The sun hung like a burning ball of fire in the sky, casting endless waves of heat across the desert. Commander Alex Mercer trudged forward, each step sinking into the soft, red sand. His mouth was dry, and the small canteen on his belt was empty. He had been wandering this alien desert for what felt like days, though the ship's timer said only a few hours had passed. Every gust of wind carried stinging grains of sand that scratched his face, but he didn't dare stop. Alex had survived wars, space battles, and countless hostile planets, but this desert was testing him in ways he hadn't expected. His boots left shallow imprints, but the wind quickly erased them. The landscape stretched endlessly, a barren wasteland of dunes and jagged rocks. In the distance, the shimmer of heat made the horizon ripple like water. He scanned the horizon for any signs of life or shelter. Nothing, just sand and heat. His eyes were tired, his throat raw. His last hope was a small oasis the map had marked, but the map was old, and he had no way to be certain it still existed. As he walked, a sudden movement caught his eye. At first, he thought it was a trick of the heat waves, but then he saw her, a young woman, lying on the sand, her body weak, clothes tattered and hair sticking to her sweaty face. She barely moved. Alex's first instinct was caution. He had learned long ago that on alien planets, strangers could be dangerous. But something about her desperate state stirred a different feeling, a need to help. He knelt beside her, brushing sand from her face. "Hey," he said gently, "can you hear me?" The woman groaned weakly. Her lips were cracked, and her skin glistened with sweat. She tried to lift her head but collapsed back onto the sand. Alex's heart sank. He looked at his canteen, hoping for just a drop of water left. There was nothing. Absolutely nothing. He scanned the area desperately. There were no plants, no rocks with hidden water, nothing. The desert had taken everything from him, but he couldn't let this woman die. Not here. Not now. Alex took off his belt and unbuckled his pack. Inside, he found a tiny emergency water vial, a single sip. It was meant to be a last resort ration, enough for him to survive one more hour under extreme heat. His lips were dry, his throat burning, but he held the vial to the woman's lips. "Drink," he urged. She coughed, then swallowed a few precious drops. Her eyes fluttered open briefly, and she managed a weak smile. Alex felt a strange warmth in his chest. He had no idea who she was, but saving her felt right. "Thank you," she whispered hoarsely. Her voice was soft, almost musical, but it barely carried over the wind. "Don't thank me yet," Alex replied, trying to sound firm, even though worry gnawed at him. "We need to move. That storm coming from the west isn't going to wait for us." He helped her to her feet, supporting her fragile frame. She leaned heavily on him, and he felt a spark of recognition he couldn't explain. There was something oddly familiar about her, though he pushed the thought away. He didn't have time for old memories or coincidences. Survival came first. The desert was relentless. Every step forward was a battle. The wind howled, carrying sand that stung their skin and burned their eyes. Alex guided her behind a low ridge of rock, trying to find shelter from the approaching storm. They finally stumbled upon a small cave hidden in the side of a sand dune. Inside, the temperature was slightly cooler. The wind's roar became a muffled hum. Alex lowered the woman onto the floor, letting her rest against the smooth stone. She closed her eyes, exhausted, and he noticed how young she was, barely older than a teenager. Her dark hair framed her sunburned face, and her breathing, though shallow, was steadying. Alex sank to his knees across from her, taking a moment to catch his own breath. He had survived countless missions, faced alien beasts, and been shot at more times than he could count. But something about this moment, this desert, and this fragile stranger made him feel powerless. "Who are you?" he finally asked. The woman opened her eyes and looked at him. I'm Lyra," she said, voice barely audible. I was searching for my family. I didn't expect anyone here." Alex studied her face. There was determination in her eyes, but also fear. "Family, huh?" he said. "Well, you found me, I guess. But we need to survive first. Storm's coming, and this desert doesn't forgive mistakes." Lyra nodded, trying to sit up straighter. "I can help," she whispered. Alex raised an eyebrow. "Help? You can barely stand." A small smile flickered across her face. "I know, but I know things. I can survive, if someone shows me a little." Her words struck a chord in Alex. Somehow, despite her weakness, she seemed resourceful. He had no idea why, but he decided to trust her, for now. They were two, strangers thrown together by fate in a desert that wanted to kill them both. Cooperation was the only way forward. The wind picked up outside, rattling the cave entrance. Sand whipped past the small opening, and the sound was deafening. Alex crawled to the entrance, shielding his face as he peered out. The storm was closer now, and he realized that staying put wasn't enough. They needed to find a deeper shelter or they would be buried in sand. "Lyra," he called, motioning for her to stay low. "We'll need to move. Can you walk?" She nodded weakly, gripping his arm for support. "Yes, I think so." Step by step, they crawled toward a cluster of rocks in the distance, barely visible through the thick sandstorm. Each movement was exhausting, their clothes heavy with sand, their skin raw from the abrasive wind. But Alex refused to let them falter. Finally, they reached a sheltered nook beneath a jagged rock formation. It wasn't much, but it would keep the worst of the storm off them. Alex helped Lyra lie down, brushing sand from her face. She closed her eyes again, murmuring something he couldn't hear over the wind. Alex sat beside her, scanning the desert through the gaps in the rocks. He couldn't shake the feeling that there was something unusual about her. Something familiar. Yet he dismissed the thought. He had no time for coincidences. Survival first. Hours passed. The storm raged outside, relentless. Inside the small nook, Alex and Lyra huddled together for warmth. They shared stories of their past, careful to avoid anything too personal. Alex told her about space exploration missions and distant planets he had visited. Lyra shared vague tales of traveling through desert regions, searching for a lost family she barely remembered. Though they spoke carefully, the bond between them grew. Alex found himself watching her as she slept, noting the subtle rise and fall of her chest, the small frown of discomfort from the cold stone. He couldn't explain it, but he felt responsible for her. When the storm finally subsided, the desert was calm again, but the challenge wasn't over. Their supplies were minimal, the nearest settlement miles away, and the sun would rise soon, bringing another wave of unbearable heat. Alex helped Lyra to her feet. She leaned on him, weaker than before but determined to keep moving. He could see a spark in her eyes, a fire to survive that matched his own. As they started walking again, Alex thought about the strange feeling he had when he first saw her. Something deep inside him stirred, a memory locked away for years. But he pushed it aside. There would be time for questions later. For now, they had to survive. And in the harsh alien desert, survival was all that mattered. The desert night was quiet, almost peaceful, but Alex knew better. In the distance, the sand dunes rolled like waves and the wind still whispered faintly, reminding him of how fragile life was here. He and Lyra had found a small rock formation the previous night, enough to shield them from the worst of the sun and wind. But they couldn't stay. The desert would not forgive idleness. Lyra sat cross-legged on a flat stone, her knees hugging herself for warmth. The fire Alex had managed to start flickered weakly, casting shadows across her face. She looked different in the dim light, so small yet so strong. Alex studied her quietly. "You're good at surviving," he said finally, breaking the silence. "For someone who looks, well, frail, you have skills." Lyra gave a small smile, tired but proud. "I learned a long time ago that surviving alone isn't easy. You have to watch every step." Every breath, Alex nodded. He understood completely. He had spent his life in hostile environments, but she had an instinct for survival that matched his own. Something about that felt familiar, though he couldn't place it yet. I still don't know your story, Alex said. Where are you from? Why are you in this desert? Lyra hesitated. Her dark eyes darted to the horizon, then back to him. I was looking for my family, but I don't know much about them. I only have fragments, pieces of memories, names, places, faces I've never really seen. Alex frowned. Something about the way she spoke tugged at him. A name, a face? Could it be possible? No, it couldn't. He shook his head, dismissing the thought. He had no reason to think this stranger was connected to his past. Not yet. They ate a small ration of dried food, passing it back and forth, each bite a reminder of how little they had. The desert was merciless. Water was scarce. Food rarer still, and the sun would rise soon to scorch the land anew. As night deepened, Lyra's curiosity grew. Commander, why are you out here? I mean, really out here? She asked, looking at him with genuine interest. Alex leaned back on his hand, staring at the stars. They were strange alien constellations, unfamiliar yet beautiful. I'm an explorer, he said simply. I've been to planets humans don't even talk about. Some are beautiful, some not so much, but I guess I never expected to crash in a desert like this and find someone in need of help. Lyra nodded. It's strange. Meeting someone here so far from anyone else, it feels like fate. Alex smiled faintly, though he felt a strange shiver at the word. Fate wasn't something he believed in. Yet something about her presence made him question that. Hours passed. They shared more about themselves, though carefully. Alex told stories of distant worlds, of sandstorms on planets with two suns, of alien creatures both terrifying and magnificent. Lyra listened intently, occasionally sharing her own adventures, though vague. She spoke of searching for a lost settlement, of surviving attacks from desert predators, of moving from place to place, never truly belonging anywhere. Do you have a family? Alex asked cautiously, not knowing why he asked, but feeling compelled. Lyra shook her head. I think I do somewhere, but I don't know where or who. I was abandoned, I suppose, or maybe I got lost. I only have fragments, hints of something I can't quite remember. Alex swallowed hard. Something inside him stirred. He didn't want to hope, didn't want to imagine that there was a connection, and yet, that spark of recognition lingered. The desert night was cold, but the stars overhead were bright. Alex felt a sense of calm, almost strange, in the presence of this girl who should have been a stranger. He realized that despite the danger, the harshness, the relentless desert, he felt protective. Lyra, he said softly. I don't know what your family is like or if you'll find them, but I'll make sure nothing happens to you tonight. I promise. She looked at him, eyes wide. Why do you care? Alex shrugged. I don't know. Maybe because someone once protected me, and I know what it feels like to be alone in a place that wants to kill you. Maybe because I can't stand the thought of losing someone else here. Lyra didn't answer immediately. She simply nodded, leaning against the rock as sleep overtook her again. Alex stayed awake, keeping watch, his mind racing. He couldn't shake the feeling that she was somehow connected to him, though he didn't know how. The resemblance, the instincts, the survival skills, they all felt familiar, like echoes from a past life he had buried long ago. When dawn came, the desert was blinding. The sun rose slowly, painting the dunes in shades of gold and red. Alex roused Lyra gently. Time to move, he said. We need to find water and shelter before the heat becomes unbearable. Lyra rubbed her eyes and stood, leaning on him for support. I'm ready, she said. Her voice had strength now, and Alex admired that. They traveled cautiously, following the vague directions Lyra remembered from scattered maps and memories. The desert stretched endlessly, a test of endurance and willpower. Sand slipped under their boots and the heat beat down mercilessly, but they pressed on. Hours into their journey, Lyra spotted a glimmer in the distance. Water? She asked hopefully. Alex squinted. The reflection shimmered in a way that suggested a pool or oasis. Possibly, he said. Let's move carefully. The desert loves to play tricks. As they approached, they discovered a small patch of water nestled between rocks. It wasn't much, but it would sustain them. They drank cautiously, sharing the water as they had the first sip. Lyra's eyes sparkled with relief. Thank you, she whispered, looking at him. There was a strange intensity in her gaze, something Alex couldn't place. It felt almost familiar. He dismissed it. though he could feel it in his chest. Later, while resting, Lyra explored the area and stumbled upon an old, half-buried artifact. It was a small metallic box with a holographic interface. Curious, she activated it. A faint glow illuminated the cave, projecting a record of someone's genetic information and family history. Alex glanced over and his heart froze. The name displayed in the hologram, the same name he had long buried in memory, made his pulse race. Could it be? No, it couldn't. Yet every instinct, every feeling screamed at him that this girl, Lyra, was connected to him in a way he had never imagined. He looked at her quietly, unsure how to reveal what he suspected. Lyra noticed his hesitation. "What is it?" she asked softly. Alex shook his head. "Nothing. Just keep watch while I check this." But his voice trembled slightly, betraying his calm facade. The hologram displayed more information, fragments of memories, birth records, and a timeline that matched events from Alex's own life. The realization hit him like a desert storm. This girl, this Lyra, was his daughter. His own flesh and blood, born years ago in a time he had thought lost, in a past he had buried deep. His mind raced. How could this be possible? He had never known she existed. And yet here she was, standing before him, unaware of her connection to him, trusting him with her life in the harshest desert of all. Alex swallowed hard, fighting to stay calm. There was no time for panic. The desert was unforgiving, and they needed to keep moving. Yet the knowledge burned inside him, a secret that would change everything. Lyra watched him silently, sensing his tension, but not understanding why. She trusted him, had relied on him, and had begun to feel a strange bond she couldn't explain. Little did she know the bond went deeper than she could imagine. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a mixture of danger and beauty. Alex realized that despite the storms, the heat, and the uncertainty, he had a new reason to survive. Not just for himself, but for the daughter he had never known. They set out again, walking side by side. Each step was heavy, each gust of wind sharp, but the journey had purpose now. The desert was no longer just a test of endurance, it was the stage for discovery, connection, and the fragile beginning of a family reunited against all odds. And as the sun climbed higher, Alex kept one eye on Lyra, silently vowing that he would protect her, guide her, and ensure that the harsh desert could never take her from him. Not again. The desert was quieter now, but the silence was not comforting. Alex and Lyra had managed to find a rocky path that led toward a distant outpost marked on Lyra's fragmented maps. The sun beat down, relentless, and every step was heavy. Sweat soaked their clothes, and their lips were cracked from dehydration, yet both moved forward with determination. Alex couldn't shake the feeling that time was slipping away. He needed to know if his suspicion was true, if Lyra was truly his daughter. Every instinct screamed it, yet the thought was almost too unbelievable to face. He tried to focus on the immediate: water, shade, and survival. But the desert had a way of forcing truths to the surface, whether one was ready or not. "Alex, do you think we're going the right way?" Lyra asked, her voice tired but steady. "According to the map in your notes, yes," Alex replied, glancing at the sun. "But the desert has a way of lying to you. Stay close, okay?" Lyra nodded and leaned on him as they climbed a ridge. She had become stronger in the past days, her body adjusting to the harsh conditions. Yet there was a subtle vulnerability that made Alex feel even more protective. Hours later, they saw the outpost, a small cluster of metallic buildings partially buried in sand, with antennas jutting into the sky. Smoke curled faintly from a vent, and small figures moved around the compound. Relief washed over both of them. It was civilization, or at least as close to it as one could hope for in the desert. As they approached, a group of scientists emerged, armed with scanning equipment. "Halt!" one of them shouted, though the tone was more curious than hostile. "Identify yourselves." Alex raised his hands. "We're survivors. No threat." He quickly explained their situation, the crash, the desert journey, and the need for water and shelter. The scientists exchanged glances and nodded. They guided Alex and Lyra into the outpost, offering water, food, and medical attention. Lyra drank deeply, finally able to hydrate properly. Alex watched her carefully, noticing how the relief softened her features, but the shadow of fatigue remained. One of the scientists, a woman with a kind face and sharp eyes, glanced at Lyra. "We have records here that might interest you," she said. "There's been a new scanning protocol for travelers with unknown backgrounds. It's meant to reunite lost families and track genetic histories." Alex felt a tight knot form in his chest. Could it be? He followed the scientist to a small room filled with holographic displays and scanning equipment. Lyra stayed close, curious but cautious. The scientist activated a terminal. A holographic interface displayed Lyra's genetic information. Alex's heart pounded as he watched the data load. Names, dates, locations, and then it appeared. The record showed her birth details, linked to a parent he recognized instantly. Alex froze. The evidence was undeniable. Lyra was his daughter, the child he had never known, the one he had unknowingly abandoned years ago during a mission he had long buried in memory. He didn't know how to react. Joy, shock, guilt, they all collided inside him. He wanted to tell her immediately, but the words caught in his throat. How could he explain decades of absence in a few sentences? How could he share the truth without overwhelming her? Lyra noticed his sudden silence. "Alec, what is it?" she asked, worry flickering across her face. Alex swallowed hard, trying to steady his voice. "Lyra, there's something you need to know. Something important about who you are." Lyra tilted her head, confused. "What do you mean?" He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of every lost year. You're my daughter, my child." For a moment, the room went still. Lyra blinked, unsure she had heard correctly. Her mind raced. "What? How? That's impossible." Alex shook his head. "I thought the same. But the records, the timing, it all matches. You were born when I was on a mission to the outer colonies. I didn't know. I didn't even know you existed until now." Lyra's eyes widened. Emotions swirled, shock, disbelief, confusion, and a strange flicker of recognition she couldn't explain. You're my father?" "Yes," Alex said gently. "I never knew, and I can't change the past. But I want to be here for you now. I want to help you survive. I want to be your father if you'll let me." Tears welled in Lyra's eyes. She wanted to scream, to ask questions, to run away, and yet something inside her told her to stay. Something in her heart recognized the truth, even if her mind struggled to accept it. I don't know what to say," she whispered. "You don't have to say anything now," Alex said softly. "We need to survive first. Then we can figure everything else out." The revelation hung between them, a fragile truth that could either heal or break them. But the desert had no time for hesitation. Outside, the wind had picked up again, and the scientists warned them of increased drone activity in the area, automated scouts left behind by a previous terraforming mission. The desert was not done with them yet. Alex and Lyra prepared to leave the outpost, now with purpose beyond survival. Every step they took toward safety was a step toward understanding each other, toward rebuilding a connection that had been lost before it had even begun. As they moved through the desert, Alex noticed Lyra observing him closely. She had questions, of course, who he was, why he had never been there, what had happened all those years. But he understood that answers would come in time. For now, the desert demanded their full attention. The journey was not easy. Dunes shifted beneath their feet, the sun burned relentlessly, and strange desert creatures watched from a distance, yet they moved with determination. Alex felt a strange pride in her resilience. She was strong, resourceful, and clever, a reflection of himself in ways that made him ache with emotion. At one point, they had to cross a narrow canyon. The rocks were loose, and one misstep could send them tumbling into the depths below. Lyra froze, fear flickering across her face. Without thinking, Alex stepped in front of her, guiding her hand and showing her where to place her feet. "Trust me," he said firmly. "I won't let anything happen to you." She nodded, gripping his arm as they carefully made their way across. Every step was a test of trust, and she felt an unexplainable comfort in his presence. It was as if a part of her had always known him, though she had never seen his face before. Hours later, they reached a higher ridge and stopped to rest. The desert stretched endlessly before them, a harsh and unforgiving landscape. Yet for the first time, Alex felt hope, not just for survival, but for connection, for a chance to be a father to the daughter he had never known. Lyra turned to him, her expression a mixture of confusion and curiosity. "Alex, and why now? Why tell me this in the middle of the desert?" Alex smiled faintly, though it was tinged with sadness. "Because you deserve to know, and because I want you to survive, and I want to do it with you. You're my daughter, Lyra, and I won't let anything happen to you." She looked at him, searching his face for any sign of deception. There was none, only sincerity. And though the desert was dangerous, and their journey far from over, a new bond had formed, one that was stronger than fear, exhaustion, or the relentless heat. As the sun began to set, painting the dunes in gold and crimson, Alex and Lyra continued their journey. The desert had tested them, pushed them to their limits, and revealed truths neither could ignore. For Alex, it was a chance to reclaim a lost connection. For Lyra, it was the beginning of understanding her place in the universe, and the discovery of a father she had never known but somehow recognized. And though the desert stretched endlessly before them, filled with challenges yet to come, one thing was certain: together, they were stronger. And together they would survive. The sun rose slowly over the desert, casting long shadows across the dunes. Alex and Lyra had managed to travel most of the night, guided by faint landmarks in the stars above. The revelation of their connection had shifted something unspoken between them. Lyra's cautious curiosity now mixed with a fragile trust, and Alex's protective instinct deepened into something more, a determination to keep her alive and safe no matter the cost. The desert stretched endlessly, but a small glimmer on the horizon caught their attention. It was a settlement, a proper human colony with domed habitats, wind collectors, and water storage tanks. Relief flooded both of them, but Alex kept his guard up. He had learned that safety in the desert was often an illusion. As they approached the settlement, a team of guards noticed them. Their uniforms and scanning devices marked them as a formal colony security force. The guards raised their weapons, cautious, but Alex raised his hands, signaling peace. "We're survivors," he said. "No threat." Lyra stayed close, silently gripping his arm. There was a mixture of excitement and fear in her eyes. This place promised safety, yet they both knew the desert outside could claim them at any moment. The guards lowered their weapons after confirming their story. The settlement welcomed them with water, medical care, and shelter. Lyra drank deeply, and Alex watched, silently grateful that she would finally have relief from the relentless thirst of the desert. Inside the settlement, Alex and Lyra were offered a quiet room to rest. Lyra sat by a small window, looking out at the vast desert. "It's beautiful, in a terrifying way," she said softly. Alex nodded, sitting across from her. "It is, and it's honest. The desert doesn't hide anything. It tests everyone. But surviving it makes you stronger." Lyra turned to him, her dark eyes reflecting the sunlit sand. "Alex, I've been thinking about what you told me about being your daughter. I don't know how to feel." Alex reached out, gently touching her hand. "You don't have to feel anything right now. It's a lot to take in. I can't change the past, but I can be here for you now. That's what matters." Lyra's eyes softened. There was a mixture of confusion and hope. For the first time, she felt a connection she had never known. Someone who would not abandon her. Someone who was truly family. Over the next few days, Alex and Lyra explored the settlement. Scientists and engineers shared maps, survival tools, and knowledge about the desert and its dangers. Alex taught Lyra techniques to navigate, avoid predators, and ration supplies, while she shared the clever tricks she had learned during her travels. Their skills complemented each other perfectly, making them an unstoppable team. One afternoon, while walking near the edge of the settlement, Lyra discovered a half-buried artifact similar to the one they had found in the desert. It contained logs from earlier settlers, detailing the terraforming projects and the monitoring drones scattered across the desert. Alex studied the data carefully. The desert isn't just harsh, it's watched. These drones track travelers, animals, anything that moves. We need to be careful when we leave, even for a short journey. Lyra looked at him, concern in her eyes. We survived this long. We can survive anything together, right? Alex smiled, feeling the weight of her trust. Yes, together we can survive anything. That evening, they climbed a small hill outside the settlement. The sun dipped below. The horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange, pink, and purple. The desert seemed endless, yet the settlement below was a beacon of hope. Alex felt a deep sense of gratitude, not just for surviving, but for finding his daughter, for seeing her safe, alive, and learning to trust him. Alex, Lyra said, breaking the silence, I've always felt different, like I didn't belong anywhere. But being with you, here, I feel like I finally belong somewhere. Alex's throat tightened. He had imagined this moment countless times in dreams he didn't dare admit. Lyra, you belong with me and with yourself. You don't need to be anyone else but who you are. The next morning, the settlement faced a sudden threat. One of the distant drone scanners detected movement, an alert that the desert's patrol drones were approaching. Alex and Lyra quickly prepared. Using their combined knowledge, they set traps, planned escape routes, and coordinated with the settlement guards. The drones arrived in the afternoon, hovering silently at first, then scanning aggressively. Alex and Lyra moved with precision. Lyra's clever thinking guided the drones into traps, while Alex used his experience to disable several scanning devices. Every maneuver was tense, yet every step highlighted their teamwork and trust. After hours of careful action, the last of the drones was disabled, falling harmlessly into a sand dune outside the settlement. Alex and Lyra stood side by side watching the sunset, exhausted but victorious. The desert had tested them again, yet they had prevailed. That evening, Lyra sat beside Alex near the settlement's central dome. I still can't believe it, she said softly. That you're my father, that we found each other here after everything. Alex looked at her, seeing the young woman who had grown strong and resilient through the desert's trials. I never knew, Lyra, but I promise you, from now on, I will never leave your side. You're my daughter, and I'll do everything to keep you safe. A gentle breeze blew through the settlement, carrying the faint scent of desert flowers that somehow survived the harsh environment. Lyra leaned slightly toward Alex, feeling comfort in his presence, the safety of knowing she wasn't alone anymore. Over the next few days, Alex and Lyra began to integrate into the settlement. They trained with guards, shared their knowledge with scientists, and learned new survival techniques. Each day strengthened their bond, transforming it from tentative trust to a deep familial connection. One morning, as they walked along a ridge overlooking the desert, Lyra paused. Alex, I think I understand now. The desert, the storms, the danger, it brought us together. I was lost, and you saved me. Not just with water, but with your presence. Alex nodded, feeling a lump in his throat. Yes, and now we face the future together. Whatever the desert, whatever the universe throws at us, we face it as family. The two stood there in silence, looking out over the vast expanse. The desert had been their enemy, their teacher, and ultimately their guide. It had revealed hidden truths, tested their limits, and brought them together in ways neither could have predicted. As the sun set, painting the sky in brilliant colors, Alex felt a sense of peace he hadn't known in years. He had survived countless dangers, but none compared to the joy and relief of finding his daughter alive. And Lyra, once lost and alone, now had a father she could trust and a home where she belonged. The desert behind them was vast and harsh, but ahead was hope, family, and a new beginning. Alex and Lyra walked back toward the settlement side by side, their bond forged in fire, sand, and survival. They had endured the desert together, and in doing so, discovered the greatest truth of all, that even in the harshest places, hope could grow, family could be found, and the human spirit could triumph against any challenge. And so, as the night fell over the settlement, Alex and Lyra looked to the stars, bright, distant, and full of possibilities. The desert had tested them, but together, they had survived. Together, they had found each other. And together, they would face whatever the universe held next.